In this video, I'll be ranking every level in New Super Mario Bros. Wii. This is a game I've always loved playing as a kid, so I thought I'd go back and see how these levels held up. This game has 9 different worlds and 79 different levels, so I'm going to try and be pretty quick with my thoughts on each of them to save some time, but there will be some that I'll go into depth about. Now, a few disclaimers before I begin. First, I'll be putting a score on all of these levels from 1 to 10, because when ranking a big list like this, it can be hard to tell whether or not something is actually good without comparison to other levels, especially towards the middle section, so that'll be there just to give you some more context. Next, when ranking these levels, I'm mainly taking into account just my enjoyment of the level, and that might include how much I like the design, the gameplay, the star coins, or anything else that comes up. Now, with that out of the way, let's get into it, starting with the very worst levels. Yup, 4-4 is the worst level in the whole game. You probably don't even remember this level, but I promise you it's terrible. First, for being an underwater level in a world that's centered around the beach, 4-4 is underwhelming. No, underwhelming doesn't even describe it. This level is awful. I get what they were going for here, this level is kinda difficult and there's always some enemies to avoid, but there's one huge problem that's staring this level in the face. Water levels suck. So, if you're gonna have a water level, just make sure it's not that hard so I don't have to spend that much time on it. That's all. I know that might seem really dismissive, but I genuinely feel that way. There's a lot of primarily water levels in this game, but they're all relatively easy, or at least difficult in a more interesting way. This level is just hard because there's a lot of enemies. So aside from the gameplay, anything else worth talking about? Of course. The first star coin in this level might be the worst star coin in the whole game. First of all, it's very difficult to find. But hey, that's the point of star coins, right? So what makes this one bad? Well, you see, every other well-hidden star coin in this game is usually behind a wall or requires you to really search the place. This star coin, however, is in a hard spot, but it's because you need to hit this P-switch, then realize that one of the pipes is no longer shooting bubbles, then swim in it before the timer runs out. I know that sounds kinda dumb and maybe obvious when watching someone do it for you, but when playing this level, it never crossed my mind that hitting a P-switch would turn off the bubbles in a pipe. That just doesn't make any sense to assume that would happen. Their star coin is awful and this level is awful. And if I'm being honest, World 4 is just kinda awful as a whole, but I'm getting ahead of myself. What's next? Because 2-6 is both a sky level and an auto-scroller, it kinda sets itself up for failure. This level isn't really that fun, but it almost feels like it was designed to be that way. Like what would you expect when all of the level is just standing on this cube that moves so slowly? Really? Could nobody think of anything more interesting than this? I mean, there's one little section where you can jump off the platform to go into a tube, and that's pretty mediocre, but something, I guess. I don't know, I don't really have much to say about this level, honestly. 8-4 was a very difficult level for me to place. Part of me hates this level, but part of me is intrigued at how unforgiving and hard it is. This level is entirely underwater, and you can't see 80% of the screen most of the time, but you can see just enough that you can kind of make out what's going on, but it's still really difficult. You mix that with a ton of enemies, and you basically sum up this entire level. There's a few different sections, and they progressively get harder as time goes on, but it's not because there's more enemies or anything, it's just because you can see less of your surroundings. At the last section, you're basically guessing where everything is and hoping that nothing hits you. As I was writing this review, I wasn't exactly sure where to put it, but now that I've really thought about it, I realized this is one of the worst and most unfair levels in the whole game. And just because it's in World 8 doesn't give it the right to be hard in a stupid way like this is. 3-5 with no bricks is a weirdly short and unsatisfying level. I don't really love these auto-scrollers in this game because it's really hard to keep them entertaining and balanced the whole time. Whenever you're on these, the gameplay is either dodging something relatively difficult, or waiting for that difficult part to happen. When in regular levels, if a part or section is too easy, you just sprint through it to the harder part. So I already don't love this level in concept, but then combining that with the fact that it's literally like 1 minute long makes it just really unimpactful and unmemorable. 1-4 is the first water level in the whole game, and though most of the levels in World 1 do a good enough job at teaching you the basic concepts of the game while still being interesting, I don't think this one does. Outside of being in the water, this level has no look or theme or anything to remember it by. Also, in case you haven't picked up on it yet, I just don't like the underwater levels very much. Your movement is a lot more slow and difficult to control and harder to get good at, which makes it less satisfying. One good thing about this level though is its star coins, which are all super fun to get. 2 of the 3 require you to shoot ice balls at a fish so it can either float you up or block a tube from shooting bubbles. Outside of that, there's not much else going on here. Okay, real quick question here, but does anybody remember 6-2? Like, genuinely, I completely forgot about this level. It's not even that bad, but its existence completely left my mind a few years ago, and it feels so weird pulling these memories back into my head. After playing it again, I realize exactly why I can't remember it, because it looks exactly like 1-2. I mean, they could have at least made the walls brown so it looks like World 6, but they couldn't even do that. As far as the actual stuff in this cave, it's okay, I guess. There's some spinning wheels and some bats and stuff, but honestly, this level is so mediocre that compared to all the great levels in this game, this one is kind of terrible. Just like everything else in World 4, the World 4 Ghost House is not very good. The gimmick here is these mice, which are just okay. They're not really a threat, just kind of a thing you can kill, I guess. The moving platforms in the beginning room are kind of cool, and they hide the first star coin in a pretty cool spot, but I literally don't remember anything else about this level. With how much I hated the original version of 3-5, you'd think the addition of the red bricks would make it a lot better. I mean, hey, the concept of having red bricks that you can unlock to make a level change a lot is super cool. They must have found a way to make it change the gameplay a lot here, right? No. I mean, look at this gameplay. It's literally the same thing as before with a few tiny changes. There is, however, a second half that they add, which makes 3-5 the length of a normal level now, which is great. The second half is maybe a tiny bit better than the first half, but honestly, this is just a mediocre level that can't really be fixed. Okay, we're now in the mid territory, and the first level in this category is the World 3 Ghost House. This level is honestly a lot more average than I remember. It starts with a big room with a bunch of doors, which is okay, I guess. But then there's these poles, which I don't even know what's supposed to be fun about these. They're just really tedious and not even difficult to climb on at all. But then there's this room, which has this rope you hang on and climb across. Again, I find this really tedious and annoying, especially when the boos get in your way and you just have to go back or take a hit. Then after that, there's this section, which is good. Definitely out of the 4 portions, this is the best, but it's definitely not great, especially after you've played this level more than once and know that the big drops are going to happen. The one compliment I can give this level is that the secret exit is in a super cool spot. You need to jump down without knowing exactly where it is, and you can just barely see it in the bottom left corner when you play through the normal way. Anyway, as far as ghost houses go, this one is, again, really mediocre. As far as levels in World 5 go, 5-5 is definitely the weakest. I always forget that this level even exists when I play this game. This level's based in the sky, and you ride on these weird green things that are just not that interesting. I don't know why they didn't just use the flying turtles from 7-6. I think those guys are way cooler. Anyway, this level's gameplay isn't too bad, definitely a little boring, but it's a decent experience and a cool deviant from the usual World 5 jungle look. Not terrible, but I never really go back to it. For being one of the last levels on World 1, 1-5 is a nice breath of fresh air. Having a level based in the clouds and having entirely new blocks and obstacles ensures that this level will be a good time. However, I kinda forgot this level exists, honestly. It totally detracts from the grassy theme of World 1, and so I have a hard time distinguishing it from the other sky mushroom levels. So overall, this level is just kind of okay. As the third level in the game, 1-3 introduces the player to Yoshi. That's the main gimmick of this level. Outside of Yoshi's appearance though, there's not a ton going on here. A few Hammer Bros, a few Piranha Plants, but this level would benefit from a more consistent idea to make it memorable. However, I will give it props for the super cool secret exit it has by using Yoshi to jump just high enough to get on the ceiling. The secret is pretty obvious, but it should be since it's the very first one in the whole game. Aside from that one thing though, there's not a lot going on in this level. World 1 Tower is the most disappointing tower in the whole game. The big gimmick in this level is moving platforms, and there are some parts where you can get smushed if you aren't quick enough, but outside of that, this level is too easy and a little unmemorable. However, something great I've noticed about almost every tower is that they all have really great star coins. Star coins here are definitely good, but not enough to keep it from being the lowest tower on the list. Right above World 1 Tower is the worst castle on the list. The thing that makes World 5 Castle not work for me is the overuse of the gimmick here, which is the chain fences. Literally, that's this whole level, just hopping around on these rotating fences. As a concept, I think they're decent, but to put them at a castle level is a little under the bar, since I have such a high expectation for these levels. The boss fight is also a little underwhelming. It's kind of creative, but it also feels really messy and a little too weird, to the point that it doesn't really feel like a boss battle anymore. Like the Chain Chomp is literally bigger than the Koopaling, so he doesn't really feel like a threat. This boss fight, as well as the whole level, is just pretty unsatisfying, which is sad since World 5 is one of my favorite worlds. It sucks that the last level has to be one of the worst levels here. 8-5 is a pretty forgettable auto-scroller that I don't ever really come back to. I like how the Bob-ombs have little parachutes and try to land on your platform, but outside of being a little difficult, this level isn't really doing much for me. There's a lot of other levels in World 8 that I'd rather play than this one. There's just not much of real substance going on here. Weirdly enough, 4-5 is the only level in World 4 that's entirely on a beach. I guess that just goes to show how much World 4 sucks. Do you guys understand that I don't like World 4 that much yet? Should I keep reminding you? Okay, I will. Anyway, this level has Lakitu throwing the spiny eggs at you, and I feel like that actually fits the beachy look really well. The only big drawback to this level is that this kind of thing was already done in World 2, and this level doesn't really do anything that that level didn't do. The star coins are also in similar places, so this level is okay, but just not really that creative. 4-1 works as an introduction to World 4. It has the beachy vibes and a lot of water and spiky fish, but outside of helping you understand what World 4 is going to look like, it doesn't have much else going on. Everything in this level, besides the backdrop and the aesthetic, have already been done at this point, and since this is going to be a very water-centric world, you'd think it would have some new creature or something that's unique to just this world, but we don't see it here. It really just feels like a filler level. As far as all the World 2 desert levels go, 2-5 is probably the weakest. I think the idea of getting Yoshis and combining them with these spiky guys that turn into fruit is kinda cool, but not anything crazy. That's kinda this whole level. One big highlight here though is the star coins, which are all really great and well hidden. 4-3 is another mediocre entry for World 4. This level's whole gimmick is these crabs that throw dirt at you. This would be cool, except for the fact that, aside from them being crabs, they just feel like rip-offs of those guys from Super Mario Bros. 3. These guys were cool when they were introduced, but every time I play this level, I just think these crabs are lazy rip-offs. There's also a mini guy that you can get in this level, and I actually think that's a super cool addition to a partially water world, since one of his abilities is running across water. However, aside from the one instance where you use the mini guy to collect a star coin that would be really difficult to get as normal Mario, I feel like there's just so much missed potential here. I feel like the developers could have very easily made a super cool mini Mario level that's like entirely over water. Tell me that wouldn't be the coolest thing ever. It sucks that they didn't, but if someone who works at Nintendo ever sees this, just know that I'm currently unemployed and my DMs are open. So there's only 3 airships in this whole game. 2 of them, the one in World 4 and the one in World 8, are really good and well put together. The other one is not. World 6 airship has such high potential, but it's all wasted by being an auto-scroller and by having really boring enemies. This whole thing is just some slowly spinning wheels, a few of these guys that throw wrenches, and some wind-up bird things. That's the whole thing. No progression, no meaning, just a bunch of stuff slapped together. This level feels kinda like a crappy Mario Maker level that tried to recreate the coolness of a normal airship, but failed. That being said, the boss fight slaps. All the Bowser Jr. fights are super fun and unique, and this one is no exception. That doesn't stop this level from kinda sucking though. Alright, we are now officially in the decent category, starting with 8-2. As far as World 8 levels go, this one is relatively pretty tame and underwhelming. The level's main deal is these spinning wheels and the spike balls, which are both not super interesting, especially when paired together. There's a few sections that are kinda cool, but this level mainly feels regressive for being so late in the game. World 2 Castle is the biggest mixed bag in maybe this whole game. On one hand, the first 80% of this level is based off some of the worst gameplay mechanics this game has to offer. In this level, there's multiple points where you have 3 different floors you can choose, and 2 of them are wrong, and make you just repeat the same room again. Whose idea was that? How is that supposed to be fun? I'm really not sure. However, you combine that awful first part with one of the best boss fights in this whole game, and you can officially call me confused. The reason I love this boss fight is because it's impossible to just cheat your way through, and the fight is actually pretty tough and fun. Having this big beefy Koopa jump down from one of these tubes at random to try and stun you is really intense, and I always have to give it my full attention to be able to beat. Overall, mixing the amazing and the awful, this level just ends up being okay. 8-3 is based on these huge lava waves that you have to avoid. I like this idea in theory, but in practice it fails in one of 2 ways. Either the platforms you're on are high enough that you don't need to worry about the waves, so it's like a regular boring level, or it's low enough that you do need to worry about the lava, but it moves so slowly that it becomes super tedious. This level always fits into one of those two categories, except when getting this star coin, which I actually really like. I guess there's also these chain platform things, which I think only appear in this level, and they're pretty cool. I like how they sink down when you stand on them, but they don't really fix this level. I just wish the lava waves moved a little faster or only did like one hit of damage instead of insta-killing you, so you could do a little more with it, because I really like the idea. This level just feels like missed potential. World 7 Ghost House is yet another example of a haunted house that's decent, but not great. This level has these punchy guys, and they're pretty funny and cool to deal with and have them punch stuff for you, but they don't leave much of an impression with me. Next is this room where you fall for like 20 seconds straight. This part's pretty cool, but unfortunately, that's the end of the level. This level has potential to be good, but I could literally beat it in 30 seconds, making it feel incomplete and unsatisfying. World 1 Castle hits you with a lot of spinning gears and thwomps. The spinning gears appear all throughout the level, and though they can be a little difficult if you're like 5 years old, they're mostly kinda just mindless. The thwomps on the other hand are way more fun. With all of them, you have to decide whether you want to wait for it to crash down in front of you and run while it's going back up, or just run past it and hope none of them hit you. This makes for super fun gameplay. The boss itself is kind of way too easy, but let's be honest, almost every boss fight in this game can be cheated by just jumping back on the boss right as they get up. So this level is a bit of a mixed bag, but overall, I still find it pretty fun. World 2 Tower serves its purpose pretty well as a halfway point in World 2. This tower uses these chain walls that you can stick to as its primary obstacle, and they're pretty fun and challenging at points. The star coins are decent, and that's about it. This boss fight is annoyingly easy as usual, but this level's mostly pretty good. As the second level in the game, 1-2 has a burden of teaching the player about a lot of new game mechanics that they probably didn't know. We get access to the concept of an underground level, invincible stars, these lever things, piranha plants, and a few more other things. Just like 1-1, this level doesn't really have any super consistent themes, but again, as the second level, I don't really think it should. So, for what this level's going for, I think it accomplishes it just fine. Even without the red bricks here yet, 3-4 feels like a very well thought out and fun addition to World 3. The creators of this game did a great job doing a bunch of cool stuff with the ice blocks in this level. Turning them into moving platforms is genius since they're super slippery, making it difficult to stay on. But anyway, this level's definitely a little better with the red bricks, but still pretty solid without them. I went into 6-6 assuming it was going to be really boring since that's kinda how I remember it, but it's actually not too bad. I like how one of the players controls the lights on the ship, and I really enjoyed not being able to see everything. It makes me feel super anxious and I'm always looking for what's going to happen next. This level definitely can drag on a bit at times, but for every point it loses for that, it gains one back by just how different it is from most of the levels in this game. Between this and the other Slowbo auto-scroller 5-4, I would probably prefer 5-4, but it's just because the level always has a little more going on to keep you engaged. Both are good though. The version of 3-4 that includes the red bricks offers a pretty new experience on the level. Instead of having to walk on the slippery ice blocks, you can just run over them on the red bricks. There's also a new section here that's underground, and it's actually really underwhelming. Honestly, as a whole, I feel like the addition of the red bricks doesn't really change my enjoyment of the level, which is why I've placed it right after the original. I feel kind of the same about both. I feel like as a whole, both this level and 3-5 were so underwhelming since the idea of red bricks is so cool, but neither of these levels really pulled it off in a way that felt super interesting. Now, that being said, this level still has a pretty decent foundation, so I still like it a lot more than 3-5. World 4 Castle always jumps between being really great and really mediocre. I really like the mix of both these metal fences that you climb on and the spiky black skewers at the bottom. That makes for some pretty interesting gameplay, but this level continually switches things up in every room. In the second room, your only challenge is the skewers, but this time they're going really fast, so you have to be quick with your movement. For some reason, I really like this section. This feels like the only part of this game where things ever move this fast, which makes for some pretty unique gameplay. Next is this completely underwater section, which, if I'm being completely honest, I kinda hate. Again, I hate anything that's underwater, but I especially don't like this section. I think the fish enemies are kinda dumb, and this room just feels really incomplete, like it's missing one more thing that would make it make sense in my head. Fortunately, after this we get yet another great room with one big skewer that shoots across the room, and you need to get out of the way before it shoots at you. Then there's the boss fight, which I'm really torn about. I think the underwater theme is pretty cool, and I like the rings that she shoots at you, but something about this fight feels a little awkward. It's probably the fact that when you're underwater, you can't hit her at all, even if you land on top of her. That made no sense to me as a kid, and it still kind of annoys me now. And since you're underwater for like half of the fight, it kind of ruins the experience for me. Okay, we are now in the good portion of these levels, starting with 6-4. This is a pretty good Yoshi-themed level. Unlike 1-3, which just introduces you to the idea of Yoshi and does little else, 6-4 puts you in a super open and broad world where having a Yoshi just feels more useful. There's a lot of stuff in this level that's just out of reach as normal Mario, so using Yoshi makes a lot of sense. Outside of that, there's not much else that's really wowing me about this level, but it's pretty good. 3-2 is a respectable level in World 3. It's based on a bunch of bullet bills shooting at you all the time, and it does a decent job keeping it fun and interesting the whole time. Nothing about this level stands out too much to me, aside from this one star coin, which was so difficult for me to get as a kid. Everything else is decent here. 9-1 is the first of all of the extra levels. When going into this level and this world, you don't really have any idea what to expect, and when I played this level for the first time as a kid, I thought that every level's theme was just corresponded to the world it was from. So 9-1 was based off of the theme of World 1, which is just grasslands. This doesn't end up being the case, and so I'm taking a few points away from the level for being really misleading, but other than that, it's a perfectly fine level. Not great or anything we've never seen before, but it's decently hard and pretty fun. The whole gimmick of World 6 Castle is these teeter-totter things that swing around and you have to jump from one to the other. This idea is okay, I guess, but it gets a lot better once you add these spike balls to the mix. They're hard to predict and can bump into each other, so they create a lot of chaos. Next is the boss fight, which out of all the castle fights is probably the worst. This one's really easy to cheat, so it's like there's no real fight. Since the fight sucks but the rest level's great, this level just ends up as good. 5-3 does its job really well of expanding the idea of the jungle theme. You get introduced to these weird walking suction cup things that somehow just work perfectly with everything else in the level. They're also pretty fun to go under or over or jump on top of. Once you're familiar with them, the level throws these spinning boards at you that float over acid, and you need to walk on them really quickly while the suction cup guys walk around over you. It all culminates to a bunch of cool different weird situations that you need to deal with, and I enjoy it from front to back. However, in the context of World 5 levels, this one's definitely not the best and it doesn't stick out a ton, so I definitely think this world has better stuff to offer. 2-1 is one of the two possible levels you can start with in World 2. And having that role, I'd say it does a great job introducing the player to the desert theme. This level has a ton of, I don't even know what to call them, but floating sand things that you jump on. I find these things to be super fun, and you can make some pretty funny gameplay out of them. I especially like the third star coin, which you can get if you have a fly guy, but if you don't, then you have to hit one of these flying turtles and pick up its shell and shoot it at the star coin, all while staying on one of the floating sand things. That's kind of insane. 7-1 is the introduction to the fluffy cloud world. This level reminds me a lot of the other sky levels in the past worlds, and I like this one a lot more than most of those, mainly because it actually fits with the world it's in. You play this and think, oh my gosh, is this what the whole world is going to be? That's awesome. It also has these colorful, unique moving bricks to jump around on, and it all comes together to make a pretty fun level. 1-6 is known for its huge turning wheels that are filled with a bunch of enemies, making for a unique, and relative to the other levels in World 1, a pretty difficult obstacle. I especially love this star coin where the wheel is spinning super fast and it drops Goombas on it. This one gave me so much trouble as a kid. I didn't know that if you just jump super high really quickly then you can get it easily, but still, what a great way to sneak in a super hard star coin into a World 1 level. The rest of this level is pretty good too. I especially like the end where you jump from 3 spinning wheels to get the flag. That's super awesome. 9-5 is inspired from World 3, and it's a pretty fun vertical level. Like a lot of the levels in World 3, this one utilizes the penguin suit, which honestly, I'm a little mad that the penguin suit isn't used more in this game. It's unfortunate that it couldn't really be translated over to other terrain somehow. Anyway, this level is a climb straight up and incorporates fuzzies into the mix somehow. It works pretty well and makes for a decently difficult course. I like this one. World 6-1 is the introduction to World 6. This is a really great first level to this world. Every time I play this level, I get really excited for what World 6 has to offer me. This level just feels like the beginning of a distinct, open, and adventurous world to explore. I love the outdoor sections, I love the little indoor caves. The guys that throw rocks also fit really well here, and weirdly enough, the bullet bills also fit super well, and that's about it. This level is great as an intro. Right from the very beginning of 7-4, this level tells you exactly what makes it special. You have this platform and a block that you can bonk with your head. If you do that, then whenever you stand on the platform for a second, it zips to the other end of the track it's on. Get off the platform and it zips back. Pretty simple, but it's a cool idea. This level plays with that idea a bit, and it can get kinda interesting, but I wish they did a little more with it. There's only like one small section where you use these things to their full potential, and it's while getting a star coin. So it's a great premise, but the execution is lacking just a little bit. 4-2 is a level I totally forgot about, but it's actually pretty good. The whole idea with this level is that there's Cheep Cheeps flying around everywhere, and you need to avoid them while racing to the end. This concept isn't anything new, we've seen it in many other Mario levels in the past, but I feel like it works really well in this level. It's not a great level honestly, a little forgettable, and again, the concept isn't new, but World 4 just isn't that great, so this is relatively super high quality. Of all the mini towers in this game, the one in World 5 is the most memorable to me for some reason. That being said, it lives up to my subconscious because the tower is really solid. The shifting walls makes for an interesting setting to put platforms and obstacles inside of, and so this whole build up to the boss fight is really interesting. It's not really ever that hard, but it is constantly entertaining. The big downside to this level though is the end fight. Out of all the Koopalings, I feel like this one might be the easiest one to just skip without having to fight it at all. If this fight was a little better, this tower would be great. In my opinion, 2-2 is one of the most underrated levels in the whole game. At first, it just looks like a boring old desert level. It has some barrels and these guys who throw spiky balls, not too great. But once you actually play this level, you realize there's so much more to it. There's a bunch of little secrets here that make this level super rewarding to play. First, this spot in the quicksand that looks suspiciously long, if you sink into it long enough, it takes you to a secret underground spot with a star coin. Next is this brick that you can hit to go up to another cool spot. Then you can go into this tube and get a mini guide, then use it to go into this tube and get another star coin. All of that cool stuff in just one level. I also find this section to be super fun, where you float up on the platform and you can get a few 1-ups with the turtles if you're super good at the game like me. All around, this level has so much to it, which raises it from one of the worst levels to a pretty good one. World 7 Tower is one of the very few scenarios in which an auto-scroller makes the level better than it would have been. I love slowly floating up on this platform because it's constantly engaging in both sections. In the first, these bullet bills are shot so consistently and quickly that it kinda sets me into panic mode. Then there's the big bullet bills who are shot super fast and are actually really hard to avoid. After this, there's a Bob-omb section, and that's pretty good too. It's all simple but well done. The boss fight is pretty good too. Ludwig's fireballs that follow you around make it a lot more difficult to cheat the fight, but it still isn't that hard. Good level. 7-2 was always one of my personal favorites as a kid, and it's kinda hard not to see why. These floating bubbles are awesome. I love jumping from one to the other, and it's just the kind of simple fun that this game is made for. Eventually, about halfway through, the game randomly adds chain chomps to the mix, as well as bullet bills. These are kinda random, and I don't feel like they fit completely with the cloudy, spacey look of the rest of the level, but they definitely do their job of making the gameplay not drag. As far as the random mushroom sky levels go, I feel like the one in 7-3 is easily the best so far. The reason for that is these awesome tracks that the fuzzies ride on. They make for insanely unique obstacles and just look super cool too. As the level goes on, things just start getting crazier and crazier, and more fuzzies get added to bigger tracks, and it's really fun to watch and play. 8-1 is one of the very few intro levels on this list that I think works better as a regular level than it does as an intro. This level has a big gas cloud that slowly works forward, and you need to try and move to the right as quickly as possible to avoid it. There's tons of enemies and lava that makes it difficult to go past, so you try and balance being quick with not dying, which makes for a super cool experience. That being said, again, this doesn't really feel like a great intro. So it's not as easy to get stuck in the atmosphere that's indicative of what World 8 will be. I think 8-3 probably would have been a better intro, since in that level the main focus is on the lava, which is the thing that makes World 8 World 8. So this level's really good, but it's brought down a bit by its placement within the game. 5-2 is a really cool cave level within World 5. This level has one big gimmick, and it's the Wigglers. They combine really effectively with the claustrophobic nature of the cave, mix that with some acid on the ground, and you have a really cool concept for a level. This manages to be interesting the whole time while only dealing with all those aforementioned characters. It just puts you in interesting situations, like this one, where you have to jump on the Wiggler to get over the huge gap in the rocks. All in all, this is a great addition to World 5. In 8-6, you're constantly being tailed by lava that's slowly rising, and you need to climb to the top of this tower thing before it gets to you. I love this concept, and I think it's done decently, but I just wish it was harder. Seriously, if you died to the rising lava in this level, I'm seriously concerned as how you even made it to World 8 in the first place. This lava serves as a lot less of a threat than it should. Fortunately, even though the lava moves super slowly, you usually don't even notice since you're so focused on going as fast as you can, so it still kind of serves its purpose in making your adrenaline spike. So overall, this is a good level, not quite amazing though. Alright, getting into the great levels, we have 9-3. More than any other level in World 9, this one feels like the developers weren't really trying to make an actual level, but just screwing around and having fun. This level's all about bullet bills, and outside of a few Koopa Troopas, they're the only enemy. This level isn't that hard, but I still like it because it feels sensical enough, and it's pretty fun the whole time. I especially like getting 1-ups from the tracking bullet bills. It's kinda difficult to do, but eventually you get the hang of it. Anyway, that's about it for this level. It's good, it's a fun change of pace, but I'm not blown away by it. I just want to immediately point out that for half of my life, I didn't even know that 7-6 even existed. I would always look at the main map and know I was missing a level, but I had no clue that you had to use a secret exit in the World 6 tower to find this. Anyway, this level's really fun. I said a while back that this is a better version of 5-5 where you fly on these boring green things. This level, however, has these flying turtle guys that feel way more dynamic and difficult. The big ones sink when you land on them, and the little ones go up. Very simple, but this level does a lot with those designs, giving you a lot to do as you go through this auto-scroller. I also want to point out that this level is really hard. I don't think I've ever beaten this level without a fly guy, and trust me, I've tried. It's just that difficult. The star coins are also really good. All of them are based on understanding which guys sink and float, so yeah, that's cool. As the very last level you can play in the game, 9-8 acts as a victory lap. This level is just so unambiguously joyful with its blue sky, clouds that you can jump on, and fun music. The gameplay itself is also pretty fun. Again, it's not that hard, but there's a lot of stuff to do, blocks to hit, P-switches to flip, star coins to get. It's enough to keep you entertained the whole time. Then there's the second half, which is just full of these huge bullet bills that take up like half of the screen. These things are awesome, and it's so funny that this is the only level they're in because they're too hyperbolized to be used in a serious level, so they have to be slapped on at the very end. Overall, this is a really cool level. Nintendo has an amazing habit of always having great first levels. This one is no different. 1-1 teaches the new player about the little intricacies of this game in a fun, stress-free environment. One great thing about this stage is how uniquely varied it is across the runtime. Unlike almost every level in the whole game, 1-1 doesn't really have a theme. It's in the grassy world, but other than that, there's sections here with big wheels, tubes, big dips, a lot of holes. Point is, this level is subtly unique, showing that the creators of this game had a perfect game plan going in and accomplished it perfectly. 6-5 is a super fun level with a great primary enemy, this fat fish who tries to run into you. The first thing I'm wondering with this level is, why wasn't this just put into World 4? I mean, it works here in World 6, but the whole point of World 4 is the beach, so having a rising and lowering tide with a big fish in it would work perfectly. Anyway, though I wish this level was in World 4, it works just fine in World 6. I especially enjoy the little indoor underground parts where you need to go under the highest tide to get across. This forces you into a pretty precarious situation, which adds to the fun, which is the perfect word to describe this simple yet really creative level. 5-4 is a level that's entirely on this boat over acid. You slowly move along as enemies drop down from above, and you need to clear them off the boat pretty quickly, because if you have over 5 of them on there with you, the boat stops. This is a pretty cool concept and makes for a super interesting level. As an auto-scroller, I would think that it would get a little boring, especially towards the end, but your environment slowly changes, just enough to keep you guessing the whole time. At the very beginning, Koopas and mini Goombas drop down from platforms, but as you get closer to the end, things just start falling out of nowhere with no warning. You start getting piranha plants and bob-ombs, which are both perfect for this specific scenario. It can be a little annoying when something falls right on your head and you lose a power-up, but other than that, this level is super awesome. Wow, World 3 Castle is kind of amazing. We start with this little ice path, which isn't only used in this level, but it works extra well with the blocks being ice, which makes it more difficult. Then we have this section with bob-ombs that blow up ice for you. This concept is super cool, and I'm kinda mad it's not used anywhere else in this world. After this is another ride on the ice path, then the boss fight. But before I talk about that, there's one funny thing that I gotta mention. You know how in most castles, when you get close to the boss fight, the Koopa will start shooting fireballs at you? Well, this guy doesn't shoot fireballs, he shoots bouncy balls, which makes the level weirdly a lot more difficult, and it's just so funny to randomly see yellow balls bouncing around on the spikes and ice. Anyway, this fight is great. The slippery ice, mixed with the fact that he's on a big ball so you can't really reach him without jumping on the smaller balls first, makes this a super interesting and difficult fight. Overall, this level's great. I've noticed that the ghost houses in this game are all pretty underwhelming. I feel like with the unique mood that these levels have, it should be pretty easy to make super cool gameplay centered around them. In most cases, I've been pretty disappointed, but not with this one. World 5 Ghost House hits the mark perfectly. Unlike almost any other ghost house, this one is really dark and has the scariest and most intimidating mood out of them all. This level's a maze, and again, I think that fits perfectly with what a ghost house should be. You go from door to door fighting dead ends, star coins, random weird rooms with moving bricks or skeleton fish swimming underneath you. See, here's a good use of the skeleton fish. They're not the center of attention, but their glowing eyes are just really ominous and make you really not want to fall into the water. I also like the secret exit, which is hidden behind a fake wall. Again, I hate to beat a dead horse, but this level really accomplishes what these levels should be, and that's why I love it. 6-3, what a great level. I mean, look at this stuff. How does someone even come up with something as random as this? The mix of water and piranha plants and these dark blue little guys somehow makes for a super cohesive playthrough. You just wander around this place finding star coins and secret rooms till eventually you find your way out. It's a simple premise, but the design is what makes this level great. 5-1 is an amazing introduction to the jungle world. There's a bunch of cool stuff that sticks out to me here. These deviations from the regular piranha plants, which are both really cool and make a lot of sense since this is supposed to be a very plant diverse world. Next is these huge hollow shells you can go inside of, and they usually have star coins or tubes or something worth your time. I also like this section where you're on a wheel and you have to slowly move it forward as you try to not get hit by the piranha plant's spikes. This level is a perfect representation of how to introduce a theme and concept into a game like this. If you compare this to something like 4-1, you'll notice that this level dives into its roots a lot more. It has a lot more ideas that are central to being jungle themed. That's why this level is so much better than that one. Okay, for how much I bag on World 4 for kinda sucking, the World 4 tower is actually kind of awesome. This level is based on these huge steel blocks that you have to either avoid, run past, or climb on. For how short this level is, it's really packed with almost every possible cool way that these blocks can be used. Every room in this tower is refreshing and interesting. I especially love the second last room when there's a bunch of blocks falling down and you have to either go for the secret exit or get the star coin and finish the level normally. This room just doesn't feel like normal gameplay, but in the best way. The boss fight is decent. I love the idea of shooting rings that bounce off the walls and ceilings, but unfortunately this boss is just a little too easy to cheat through by just jumping on her right as she gets back up. Still an amazing level though. Unlike most of the other levels in World 9, 9-6 isn't trying to combine a bunch of different ideas into one crazy level. Instead, this course just feels like a really good quality World 8 level. Nothing super crazy here, but I love the platforming. These moving platforms slowly give you more and more difficult jumps, and it's really fun trying to time your jumps so that you don't fall into the lava. The star coins are also pretty great. Not super hard or anything, but fun to collect. Not much else to say about this one. It's just perfect in its simplicity. The World 3 tower is definitely one of the best mini castles in this whole game. I love almost every part of this level. The huge spinning shapes at the beginning that are super fun to climb inside of and find your way over, and I love this part where you're stuck with a bunch of skeleton Koopas until these spiky balls come in and just kill them all. Then you have to dodge the spiky balls, and it can get pretty intense and difficult, especially if you're trying to get the star coin. Also, I never noticed this until recently, but the walls in this level take a regular castle look and add some World 3 iciness to it. I know it's a small detail, but I really like it. Anyway, next is just some more spinning shapes, and the boss fight is good. Not great, but overall this level is really entertaining and memorable. 7-5 is one of my personal favorite levels in this game. This super simple level has one gimmick: these guys that blow fog at you. That's all. Yeah, I love playing it so much simply because of how perfectly it makes sense within World 7. Think about it, this is the cloud world. Of course there should be a cloudy level. And what better way to put fog in a level than make a one-off enemy who just shoots fog? It's genius. It's simple and really easy, but it's just so much fun to play. I can't really explain it. I definitely don't think this is one of the very best levels that this game has to offer, which is why it's not in the top 10 or anything, but I have a huge soft spot for this level. 9-4 is probably the most packed level in the whole game. This auto-scroller is just filled to the brim with so many things going on at the same time. There's a million pipes, bob-ombs, different platforms. It's just so chaotic, and that makes me love it. It feels like the most ADHD catered level in the game. The star coins are also really difficult to get, especially the second and third one. They're both in really weird spots. For the second, you need to either throw a bob-omb into the void or jump in there yourself, and it's stressful to have to make that decision as the level is moving forward without you. And the third star coin is so evil. You have to have an ice flower by the end of the level, which is hard to keep, and then use it to freeze this piranha plant and go into the tube above it. Pure genius. All around, this is a great level. World 4 Airship is the first time you ever fight a ship in this game, and for the role it plays, I actually think it does an amazing job. The level's first half is all about using these flamethrowers, and it does a good job putting them in places that are actually difficult and fun to get around. I especially like this section where you have to go both forward but also down at points, and it feels like going through a maze. At the second half, when you start to feel just the slightest bit of fatigue from the fire, they introduce bombs, which blow up immediately when set on fire. First of all, conceptually, this is both hilarious and genius. Second, it's really fun having to look out for bombs and fire at the same time. All that to say, I love this section. Last is the Bowser Jr. fight, and though it's really easy, it's super fun too, and is unlike any other kind of boss fight. Overall, this fight, and this level as a whole, is super consistent and fun. World 6 Mini Tower has easily one of the coolest designs out of any level. This big black skewer that you need to move around makes for a really unique situation to put Mario in, and it's fun trying to time when the skewer will start moving again so you can go as far as possible without getting hit. It's a simple idea, but it's great. The boss fight at the end is pretty good too. You can cheat through this one, but it's a little difficult with how fast he's moving and these skewers hitting the sides. Overall, the design of this level causes it to be one of the best mini towers in the game. Alright, we are now officially in the amazing category, starting with 9-2. This level kinda pisses me off, because if it was in World 4, it would easily be the best level there. I'm assuming the reason it's not is because it's too hard, but either way, it's nice to see the potential of the World 4 beach theme fully realized to make a super great level. This level is a mix between a few things. You have this fat fish that keeps swimming around trying to hit you. You have these cool platforms that move if you're standing on them, and then you have these weird blocks that expand and retract every once in a while. All three of these gimmicks are so awesome and go together so well. Another great thing about this level is since it's allowed to be really hard, it has a few sections that are just over water. You have to take a big risk and jump in the water to get to the other side. Also, the star coins here are quite nice. This one, where you have to let the platform lower to get into the tube, isn't difficult at all, but it's just so satisfying to figure out. The other great one is at the end, when you need to grab a flying Koopa Troopa and throw it at the bricks to open a tiny spot to get the star coin. This one's pretty difficult. All around, this level has so many good qualities to it that it's now my favorite World 4 level. World 7 Castle is easily one of the best castles in the game. You have the skewers, which I love, and they're moving really fast, which I also love, and you gotta run or jump from spot to spot before they hit you. One of my favorite parts of this level is at the very beginning, when your platform is these weirdly designed washing machine looking things. They're textured way differently than anything else in the level, so they kinda stick out, but I think they're really funny. One other thing I want to point out about this level is the way it looks. Every other castle in the game is supposed to be all dark and intimidating, but this one's half blasted open, which is kinda confusing, but mostly really cool. Anyway, there's a few more cool uses of the skewers, a few rooms to explore, and it all leads up to the fight with Ludwig. This fight is pretty great. It feels really intense, and I wish there was just as much effort put into all the other boss fights as there was in this one. It looks cool, it's actually kinda hard, and Ludwig has a super cool design too. All around, this level is super high quality. 8-7 is one of the most creative and well put together levels in the game. This is the level where you ride on these skeleton snake things, and they ride on these tracks that take you through lava geysers and other danger, and you gotta avoid all that. Conceptually, this idea is insane and awesome, and its execution is pretty good too. I do wish there was maybe just a few different obstacles you had to avoid. Dodging just lava gets a little boring, especially towards the end. I wish they put something like maybe some flying Koopa Troopas in the way of your path, but that's a small complaint within a mostly amazing level. 3-3 is so creative with its use of ice. This entire level is an underground ice cave, and the whole thing is so much fun from front to back. The first room with all these floating ice cubes is genuinely pretty difficult, especially with these icicles that drop down on you. Also, the use of ice bros in this level is fantastic. Every time they're used, they pose a pretty difficult enemy that I almost always take a hit of damage from. The last thing that makes this level amazing is the star coins. Both 1 and 3 are placed in genius spots. The first one is in the water behind a wall, but you see that the ice passes through it, hinting that there might be something down there. The other great one is the third one, which is in the last room. In the beginning of this room, there's a barrel that looks a little out of place. That is until you pick it up and realize that it'll stop all the ice from hitting you. If you manage to make it all the way to the end of this section, there's a star coin in a hole that you need to hit by throwing the barrel at it. Genius. World 8 Tower was really difficult for me to rank, because like a lot of the other towers, it has a huge difference in quality between the boss fight and the rest of the level. Unlike most of the other towers though, the part that's easily the best is the boss fight. The beginning of this level reminds me a lot of the World 1 tower, where you're mostly dealing with moving shapes and trying not to get squished. This level takes that concept a little bit farther with more abstract placements of these shapes and more extreme uses of them. Aside from being a bit harder than the blocks in World 1 tower though, this isn't much of a step up. I'd actually say this tower has one of the lower quality first halves. Now, the reason why this is at the very top of the list though, is because the boss fight at the end is so awesome. Unlike every Koopaling, Magic Koopa's gameplay is super dynamic and hard to predict. She'll teleport all over the map and shoot fireballs at you, and if they hit a block, it'll disappear and turn into a little enemy. If you can't knock her out soon, the fight can get really intense, and that's when it's the best. The longer this fight goes on, the more fun it is. So while the first half of this level isn't great, the second half easily makes up for it and makes this one of the most memorable and best levels in the game. To me, 2-4 is one of the coolest levels in the game. Every 5 or 10 seconds, this massive wind starts pushing everything to the right, and it can be pretty difficult to stay safe. This level also gives you like a million power-ups, so you can almost always have a fly guy. Mixing a fly guy with this wind makes for an insanely fun combo. And even better than that, there's a hidden exit that requires you to use your fly guy to get super high and super far in order to access a tube that will let you skip a few levels. Next is the star coins, which 2 of them are amazing and both make good use of the fly guy suit. The last one on the other hand is kinda awful. There's a hidden block in a really unsuspecting place that when you hit it, it'll sprout a plant that when you climb, you can get up to this cloud world. Then, once you're in there, you have to hit a bunch more invisible blocks to actually be able to get the star coin. That's the most tedious and unfun thing ever. If it weren't for this coin, this level would be a little higher, but it's still really great overall. 3-1 is the introduction to the penguin suit, which by the way is a great power-up, and this level does an amazing job introducing it. It so perfectly predicts what people will be thinking when they first get a hold of it. You get access to the suit at the very beginning of the level, and you also get to see real penguins sliding around on the ground, which makes you think that that's probably something that you can do too. Then you see the first star coin, which is blocked by a bunch of bricks, so you have to try and find out if you actually can slide. Naturally, you realize that this is really awesome, and wonder if there's any other opportunities you'll have to do it again. You go through this tube, and guess what? The entire back half of this level is just for sliding with the suit. It's one big ice slide course, and yeah, it's really fun. And in the middle of it, there's a tube that leads you to the third star coin, which is really creatively placed and requires you to freeze one of the penguins so it'll push you off the edge to grab it. Anyway, this level is absolute genius from front to back. World 8 Airship is a level that I love playing every chance I get. This level is just filled to the brim with content. It has no specific theme to it, it's just constantly giving you random stuff to do, and though I don't love everything it throws at you, I appreciate the constant change and creativity. I guess there's a pretty common theme here of these things that you have to spin on, which makes way for you to walk through a narrow passage as it's closing. That's pretty cool. Anyway, this all leads up to the final battle against Bowser Jr., but how does it stack up? It's amazing. I love all these junior fights, and this one is no exception. It's super fun figuring out that you need to ground pound to hit the bombs back up at him, and along with dodging his fire that moves super slowly in the air, the whole thing is just such a strong experience. Overall, this level is near perfect and fits perfectly into the storyline. 2-3 is easily the most surprisingly amazing level in this whole game. I love when levels deviate from the usual look of their world, but still manage to make sense and still feel connected. What I mean by this is almost every other level in World 2 has a bright blue sky and a desert background. 2-3, on the other hand, switches it up and puts you in a cave, but it still uses sand and sandstone as the floor and walls so that it still feels like World 2. That super dark look of this level makes it a lot more interesting because your vision is pretty limited, but you can still see all the necessary things to beat the level. That's proof of a super well thought out design. Next, we have these fun little secrets in this level. There's quite a lot of them. There's this star that you can get which lights up the whole level, and if you're fast enough to reach the next block before the effects wear off, you can get another, and another. If you manage to get all these stars, you can get through like 70% of the level super quickly. Next, there's some cool rooms that you can get into, but the other main super awesome thing that this level has is at the very end. If you time your jump perfectly, you can lodge this turtle shell into the wall so that you can get an infinite 1-up glitch. I can't tell you how many times I've gone back to this level just for that very end part. Anyway, due to all its super cool little secrets and its distinct look, this is an amazing level. 9-7 is easily the hardest level in this game. This level has a perfect mix with these ice blocks you're standing on, mixed with the piranha plants that shoot fire at you. They both combine to be this insanely difficult level. There's two main sections in this level. There's the first, where you're firmly on the ground, and if your ice melts, it turns into munchers who do damage if you land on them. This section is very claustrophobic, and there's a lot of tight jumps that you need to do to get around everything. Next is the second section, which turns the difficulty up to 10, especially if you're going for the star coins. This entire half is in the air, and just one layer of ice between you and the void. There's still a ton of piranha plants that shoot at you, and you need to somehow sneak down to get the star coin, and be quick enough that the space in front of you isn't melted yet. It's really hard, but then there's the last part, which is even harder. These two fire bros shoot, well, fire at you, and you need to somehow get around them, and get this insane star coin as well. It's all very hard, but also really creative and fun to try over and over again. Even though I usually die a lot more than I live when playing this level, I still have a great time and go back to it a lot. It's almost perfect, but there is one level that's even better. I don't think it should be a surprise to anyone that the final Bowser battle is easily the best level in this whole game. From pure concept down to the finest detail, this level is absolutely amazing at every point. Let's start from the beginning. You start in a relatively regular looking castle, you do some platforming, dodge some fireballs, and make your way past these sinking platforms, then you go into this tube. This leads you to one of the best rooms in this level. Lava is slowly sinking, and you need to jump from platform to platform trying to outlast it. This section, as well as most of the first half of this level, isn't specifically that hard, but it's just so cool in concept that I could play it over and over again. Next is the Bowser fight, or at least the build-up. Right as you see this huge door, you can tell that this is the real thing, and everything is about to go down. When you enter, you have to run forward as Bowser shoots these oversized fireballs at you, which again, lets you know that this is going to be a crazy fight. Once you meet him, you realize Bowser has some pretty standard attacks. It's not hard to dodge at all, but you have to get to the other side in order to kill him. Eventually, he randomly decides to jump super high, giving you the way to run underneath him and hit the switch. This initiates the hilarious cutscene that you realize that's not the real Peach, and then Bowser turns huge. This is the canonical conclusion to this game, and it's one of my favorite portions in all of gaming. You feel just so small compared to Bowser, and you have to try and move farther away from him as he shoots fireballs at you and chases you. Eventually you make it to this bigger room, which gives you access to a fly guy. This changes the dynamic of the fight completely. You're now flying from platform to platform over lava, trying to reach Peach before Bowser gets to you. After a long time, you eventually reach Peach and hit the button to, I don't know, drain the lava or something. Then you win. It feels impossible to put into words what makes this monstrous level so perfect. Every section is masterfully paced and helps create an amazing experience to end the main story. This level is perfect. Well, that's the whole ranking. If you disagree with my takes or think I'm just a stupid idiot who has no idea what he's talking about, make sure to leave a pissed off comment so I can argue with you. That's about it. See ya.